Manish, would you like to say something, Manish? You have been arrested and there is a massive protest which is also going on. Manish? Manish, you would like to say something?
There, not responding to the questions being asked. He's right now in the Rouse Avenue court. He's, of course, the CBI asking for at least 15 days custody. We have Manish Pandey who is tracking those developments. Manish, we believe that the court hearing has begun. Would you be able to tell us what exactly is being presented by the CBI today as they push for 15-day custody of Manish Sisodia?
The CBI is asking for the maximum custody of Mr. Manish Sisodia, the Delhi Deputy Chief Minister. As far as the CBI is concerned, the remand copy will be served before the court, and the remand copy will be mentioning the reasons because of which the CBI decided to arrest him and why they need custodial interrogation. Two very clear grounds are the non-cooperation by Mr. Manish Sisodia during the questioning, and also he was evasive when he was asked about the excise policy. Apart from that, the third and important ground is going to be the destruction of evidence, because remember, he has been arrested under Section 120B, that is Criminal Conspiracy, Section 477A, that is Defraud and Under Prevention of Corruption Act. Now, destruction of evidence is something which is considered as a part of criminal conspiracy, that is Section 120B of Indian Penal Code, and based on these grounds, they will be asking for custodial interrogation, and in layman language, they will be asking for the custody of Manish Sisodia.
Right, and we hear that while the CBI is presenting its case in court, they've also spoken particularly on one point on how Manish Sisodia is said to have allegedly changed his mobile phones. As the CBI, and I should remind my viewers here that the hearing in court has just begun, with the CBI counsel now presenting all that it has in its report to gain 14-day custody of Manish Sisodia. And in the first, they've claimed that Manish Sisodia has arbitrarily changed the rules. He has changed his mobile phones, and they're reading out the applications there before court. In fact, while the counsel they're presenting its argument there, speaking on the policy margin that was allegedly enhanced, the eligibility criteria itself of the tender was completely changed. And here the CBI presenting before court, if at all the liquor policy was so fine, if it was absolutely correct, then they should have gone ahead with it. What was the reason for Manish Sisodia to have scrapped it? For the Delhi government to have withdrawn the liquor policy entirely, which of course naturally raises questions on the way it was framed. Certainly raises questions on whether there was intention, malicious intention, before framing that policy with an intention to gain kickbacks from these liquor licensees. I'm going to cut across to Pooja Shali as well, who's right outside the Rouse Avenue court. Pooja, the hearing has begun and the CBI is quite stern when it presents its arguments, claiming that it wants 14-day custody of Manish Sisodia, and point by point speaks of how Manish Sisodia allegedly changed his phone numbers repeatedly and arbitrarily changed the rules and guidelines and framework of the liquor policy without actually getting it approved from competent authorities. And this is why he should be right now in custody to investigate further.
Well, first, Nabila, senior advocates Dayan Krishnan, Siddharth Agarwal, Mohit Mathur are representing Manish Sisodia, and one of the reasons they want a bail early is because of they are quoting the health of the wife. That will be one of the reasons that they could likely be telling the court. But the CBI is very clear. The CBI says it's not just about him being unclear or not giving exact responses, clear responses, because most of the replies were, I do not know. But there have been digital evidence that according to the Central Bureau of Investigation, they have been able to brought out. These are files that were allegedly deleted and have been retrieved by the CBI. This, remember, is also where the ED has been tracking this case. But the CBI wants an extended custody because they are saying it's not just about that they were not convinced with the 8 hours of questioning. It is way beyond that. There was clear evidence that they have been able to put forth to which they did not get clear answers, and they want custody on that. So the CBI is very clear. Now, I want you to understand the procedure also here. Usually, the police custody is about for 14-15 days. Now this time, while Sisodia's lawyers will want an early bail, the CBI is likely to push for at least few days of custody. Even if 14 days is not an option, at least a few days, as much as they can, they are likely to push for it. Depending on what the court says and depending on the reasons or the seriousness of this case right now, there could be trouble brewing for Manish Sisodia. But the bigger question is this trouble only for those few days when the CBI gets his custody, or is it just the starting of a trouble? Because yes, the CBI has to eventually prove these are very serious charges. They have arrested
You know,
a
Pooja,
serving minister.
as the arguments right now are presented before court, I'm going to cut across to Nalini, who has been tracking court for us. Nalini, a quick word from you. We believe that Manish Sisodia's team has also jumped in, pushing for bail and also citing Vijay Nair there, saying that he's been given bail in the CBI case, and basis of which Manish Sisodia also seeking bail. He's quoted his wife's illness as the reason to why he should be let off on bail here. How likely is it that the court will concede?
Well, Nabila, these are some strong medical grounds to seek interim bail, and that's what Manish Sisodia is doing. He's saying that his wife's health is not well, and on that basis he is seeking interim bail. But remember, it's very important to point out that this is the first time that Manish Sisodia is being produced after he was arrested by the CBI yesterday, and the CBI has given reasons for exactly why they want their custody before the Rouse Avenue court, where they've said that Manish Sisodia has been evasive during the questioning, even though he's been duly appearing before the CBI, does not mean he's been cooperating with the investigation, and that they need to conduct custodial interrogation of Manish Sisodia to get to the further details. They've also gone ahead and said that Manish Sisodia has changed his mobile phones in the past some time, because of which they've not been able to trace the exact data of what had gone on, and the digital evidence that they've relied on has been captured from the digital devices that were seized during the raids at Manish Sisodia's home as well as office. And what they're saying is that they require at least 5 days of custodial interrogation. Remember, 14 days is the maximum police custody that the CBI can ask for at this point, but they've decided to go with 5 days, so that after the 5 days they can build a stronger case from whatever they interrogate through Manish Sisodia during these 5 days.
So Nalini, clarify for us, clarify if the CBI is seeking 14-day custody, or are they seeking 5-day custody?
Nabila, CBI can maximum seek 14 days custody. He can, for the maximum amount of time, be in custody for 14 days. But for now, they've only sought 5 days custody. Right. So if this 5 days custody is granted, and once this 5 days custody expires, they'll be able to get only 9 more days custody, is essentially what I'm trying to say over here. More than 14 days custody cannot be granted to any police agency. He will have to either be released on bail or sent to judicial custody once this 14-day time period is over. And this is the reason why this custody is so crucial for the CBI, because they have only a limited amount of time to try and extract as much information as possible from Manish Sisodia. Now, the main crux of the CBI's case is regarding the drafting of this excise policy. And what they're trying to find out from Manish Sisodia is how changes were brought about in this excise policy, and how certain contentious provisions were brought in that were not part of the first original draft but were later brought in as part of the final draft. What they're also trying to ascertain is that if these provisions were brought in from some external source, from somebody who was outside the excise department, likely somebody who was later on a beneficiary of these same contentious provisions and the kickbacks that were received in lieu of that. So keeping this in mind, the CBI is going to go into the further details of this case. They've not been able to recover a lot of digital evidence regarding exactly how this draft came into being, how it went on from the first draft and how the final draft was then created, which is why they've called in Manish Sisodia. They've arrested him, and they now want to conduct custodial interrogation to find out who exactly was responsible for these clauses being brought in into the final draft, which eventually benefited several businessmen who allegedly also gave kickbacks to the Aam Aadmi Party in this entire exercise.